I was surprised the first time I saw it. It's very small. And at first I thought, there's a worm, until it started to squiggle and move away. The redback salamanders are amazing. They're very different from other salamanders that we might see. They're amphibians, so that's the same. That means they have a water stage of life and a land stage of life. But the redback salamander has almost entirely lost its aquatic stage of life. The redback salamander moms, in a couple of weeks, will be laying their eggs underneath these logs in little balloons. And I think you found some of those. Tiny, tiny little white ones. Well done, Josh. Little ones under the log, just a big cluster of eggs. That's their water stage, just inside these balloons. When they hatch, they turn into tiny versions of themselves. So unlike other salamanders, which have a tadpole stage, essentially, with funny gills that come out the side, these salamanders don't. They just have a little miniature stage. And then they get bigger and bigger, and you saw about as big as they get. So these amphibians, even though they're still amphibians, are almost entirely terrestrial. They're almost entirely in the forest. And we were lucky enough that we all got a chance to see one today. So congratulations, good eyes. A lovely recognition to our donors here on the cairn, and a nice view looking out onto Hamilton through the trees. However, please don't sit here, because there's poison ivy around here, and you will not have a pleasant experience if you sit or stand around poison ivy. And so I want to talk about it a little bit, because we might see some more along the way, and you might see some more in your travels. Poison ivy is a native species, but some people consider it just as invasive as garlic mustard or dog strangling vine. Poison ivy, does anybody know how to tell what a poison ivy is like? Josh? It has 3 leaflets. Very good, yes. So you might have heard the poem, Leaves of 3, Let It Be. Bingo. Lots of plants, however, have leaves of 3. Yeah, so it's good. It's still good, like a strawberry, exactly. However, if that's the only thing you remember, that's fine. Just stay away from all plants with leaves of 3 and you'll be just fine. There's another little trick that might help as well. I'm standing on top. Right in front of me is a classic poison ivy. Right here. 3 leaves, turning a little bit yellow in the fall. The middle leaflet is on a longer stem than the other 2. So you might think, longer middle stem, stay away from them. Maybe. That could work. So the 2 side leaves have short stems, the middle leaf has a long stem. Poison ivy will give you a red rash that will turn into blisters that last for 10 days to a month. Not a lot of fun. Sometimes it takes a little while to have the reaction. So some people carry along with them a little poison ivy pack in case. They carry rubbing alcohol and soapy water in a little spray bottle. If you put rubbing alcohol on first and then soapy water on, usually that will help in the first 10 minutes after you've touched poison ivy. After 10 minutes, it's sunk deep into your skin and it's too hard to get off. So best thing to do is to avoid it. Poison ivy can grow like that, but it can also be a vine. It can also be a shrub. It takes on many forms. Sometimes it has smooth margins, sometimes it's jagged. So it comes in many disguises. That's why it's best just to stay away from leaves of 3 and things with a longer middle stem. But there you go. It's around here. From here until our next stop, it's even in the trail. We'll be walking along rocks, and coming up in between the rocks are some poison ivy. So, in this next little section, stay on the rocks, and you'll be okay. All right. You can't have a walk on the Niagara Escarpment without talking about rocks. Because the Niagara Escarpment is one big cliff face running from Niagara to Tobermory. And right behind me is part of that cliff. Where we're standing on is part of the cliff as well. The Niagara Escarpment is mostly a cliff of sandstone, tiny, tiny, tiny pieces of stone set together in layers, and limestone, tiny, tiny pieces of sand and dead animals. put together. On the very top, or on the hardest sections, we have what we call dolostone, which is like limestone, except instead of calcium, it has magnesium, which means it's stronger. So we're standing on dolostone. Underneath us might be another layer of limestone, which erodes at a different rate. Right behind me there is also a crevice. That's a big hole that goes from the top of the cliff here to the bottom of the cliff. Hence the caution tape that used to be across here. So parents, crevice, cliff. All you need to know. That hole goes right down to the bottom. These crevices are very common at the edge of the Niagara Escarpment for two reasons. One, just plain old gravity. Rocks eventually peel off from the side of the cliff in what we call mass wasting, which essentially means a rock that's peeled off because of gravity, physically moved off. It gets helped when water gets into a crack. And you know, if you've ever made an ice cube, when you put water and freeze it, it gets bigger, right? So water that goes into a crack will get bigger in the winter and then smaller, and then bigger again in the next winter and then smaller, and will start to make that crack bigger and bigger and bigger. And if the crack is close enough to the edge, we'll make a big enough crack and the rock will fall over. It's happening all the time. It has been happening for hundreds of years. Another way we get cracks in the Niagara Escarpment is through chemical erosion. That means chemicals that are in the water that comes down from the rain or comes down from higher land eats through the rock. Acids in the water eat through the limestone, which is not terribly hard rock. And we get a network, like a spider web, of crevices and caves underneath our feet. And that's a little area, that's a system that we call karst. So if you've ever been to karst caves or a karst ecosystem, I think there's even a little park in Stony Creek that's got karst in the name. That's what they're talking about. Crevices and caves that are formed by chemical erosion of limestone. So there we go. We've got a big crevice behind us. Parents, I will leave it up to you whether your kids go anywhere near that crevice, okay? And we'll keep walking. We've walked through the worst part of the poison ivy. There might be still a little bit coming up, so please stay on the trail. But that's the walnut. So in there, underneath this juicy exterior, is that wrinkled shell that we think of when we think of walnuts. The butternut is related, so it looks very similar, but it's a bit longer, has a bit of a point to the end of it.
Is a butternut like, well, at my school they have these pointy ones that look like it's all prickly.
Ah, those are chestnuts, and we're going to see those in a second. So, right now we've reached another open meadow, but this one was created by humans. This is an orchard. Mr. McNally and his family planted fruit trees here, probably planted that walnut tree as well. And we are welcome to pick the pears and the apples that are here, if you wish. This is on Bruce Trail property, and so it belongs to the Bruce Trail, and Mr. McNally said, I'm not eating them, so please, please go ahead.
It's organic.
Mr. McNally lives in the red house just behind us, so please give him the distance. Your boundaries, guys, are, see where that milkweed patch is with the green and yellow small plants? The edge of the milkweed patch, that's your boundary. After that, Mr. McNally's property, we want to give him some space. Okay? But on this side, you will find apple trees, you will find pear trees, and we're going to find some great insects in this meadow, I am sure. So don't only look up for the fruits, but look down on the ground too. We've also got an animal burrow of some sort over here. I don't know what it belongs to. It doesn't look like it's been used recently because there's lots of growth around it. And you can see all around it, haha, pop quiz, what's this? Long vine. Oh, so we have a bit of diversity that's been human influence. Did anybody find a caterpillar?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, oh now it's there.
What did you find? What does it look like?
It's a white and green thing.
A white and green thing? Does it have legs?
Or is it a...
Oh yeah, it's skinny though, right?
It's a grasshopper.
No, they're showing to her. Grasshopper. Is this the kind with red legs? Let's take a look.
Oh.
Let's take a look and then it bounces away.